trying to talk to me in the monitors. I don't hear you. It's not working, you said. Was it working a minute ago?
Good morning, beloveds of San Diego and Chula Vista. I am the Reverend Justine Sullivan. My pronouns are she and her, and I have the honor of serving as one of your ministers here. My colleague, the Reverend Kristen Kariga, is at our South Bay campus right now with our beloveds there. The camera's right up there if you want to turn and wave. Good morning, South Bay. And I'd like to mention that the beautiful flowers on our chancel this morning are given by the family of Betty Boone, whose long and rich life we celebrated yesterday. The high point was the embodied singing of I Am Woman. And this morning we have much sacred work to do. We will welcome new members. We will light, yes, that is a joy. And we will light a candle for our beloved Reverend Jim Grant, who died this past week. And today also we will honor the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King by sharing his words. Dr. King said that there are things to which we all ought to be maladjusted, things that are just too terrible to accept. And so let us be maladjusted to the continuing violence and suffering in Gaza and Ukraine. Let us be maladjusted to the taking of hostages and the use of human shields for political advantage. And let us be maladjusted to the fact that Jewish people everywhere live in fear that they will never be safe. And let us also be maladjusted to persecution everywhere on the basis of religion, sexual orientation, gender, or other identity. We must not look away. That's what Dr. King lived and died for. We light our chalice this morning in honor of the work and ministry of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
And now please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing our opening hymn, Woke Up This Morning. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom.
Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego, where we worship each Sunday in the South Bay, in Hillcrest, and online.
Buenos días y bienvenidos a la primera Iglesia Unitaria Universalista de San Diego, donde adoramos cada domingo en South Bay, en Hillcrest y en línea.
My name is Ruth Turner, and I am a member of Journey Toward Wholeness, JTW, and I use the pronouns she, her. A special welcome to those of you who are here for the first time. Please fill out the welcome card in your order of service.
Me llamo Andrea y uso el pronombre ella. Una bienvenida muy especial a todos que están con nosotros por primera vez. Les extendemos la invitación de rellenar el formulario en el orden de servicio.
Our community is a vital, diverse, multi-generational congregation without borders, with a mission to create community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values to help heal the world.
Somos una congregación compuesta de personas de distintas culturas e identidades racializadas, personas de diversas orientaciones sexuales e identidades de género, personas de varias habilidades mentales y físicas.
We are creators of community and compassion, and though we can fall short, we're committed to practicing and affirming welcome to all.
Con espíritu de reverencia, reconocemos que nos juntamos esta mañana en la tierra de los Kumeyaay, quienes continúan viviendo en todo su territorio. Al emprender este viaje juntos, mantengamos en nuestros corazones y mentes el pueblo Kumeyaay.
In a spirit of reverence, we acknowledge that we gather this morning on the land of the Kumeyaay, who continue to live throughout their territories. May the light of this candle shine for our commitment to the Kumeyaay people and to justice and equity for Indigenous peoples everywhere.
And as Andrea makes her way back to her music stand, we invite you to rise once more in body or spirit and join us in singing our church hymn and reciting our aspiration.
From all who dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land, by every tongue. De todos bajo el gran sol, su gran esperanza, fe y amor, verdad y belleza cantando de cada tierra, cada voz. May love be the spirit of the church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. Que el amor sea la doctrina de esta iglesia, la búsqueda de la verdad su sacramento, y el servicio su oración. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad con libertad, y amarnos mutuamente en comunidad. A eso aspiramos.
So friends, today we recognize those who during the past months have chosen to join our religious community here at First UU San Diego in a formal way. As we welcome them into membership, we are also reaffirming our covenant to one another in this community And I would like to invite up our board president, Everardo Aguilar, to help us welcome our new members.
Good morning, y'all. Good morning. My name is Rose Littler Rydell. My pronouns are she and her, and I am your communications coordinator. Good to see you. Hi. So some of our new members have been active UUs at other congregations. Some have been involved here for a time and are becoming members now, and others still have only recently discovered Unitarian Universalism. All have unique stories and bring vital, fresh energy to our congregation. Please join me in greeting and getting to know our newest members following the service. Now will these, the new members, please come forward as your name is read. Susan Demerit. Martha Davis. Michael Van Cleek. And Linda Holroyd. And now, will the congregation recognize our new members by reading the passage of welcome that'll be shown on the screen and in your order of service. To you who are now joining our religious community as new members, we extend a warm welcome and our blessing. May the journey we take together nurture and enrich our lives. This church offers many blessings to our members, friends, and wider community. We give you a place to worship, to explore your spiritual paths, to learn, to play, to grow, to give, and to be comforted and to offer comfort, to work towards justice, and to connect to new friends and a community of many loving hearts and open minds. To our newest members, we also honor the blessings that you bring to this community with your unique gifts and hopes and life experiences. Now, will the new members please join in reading as the congregation reaffirms its covenant of membership? It'll also be up on your screen. As members of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego, we respect the honest search for truth and meaning in persons and all religions. We strive to accept differences as opportunities for growth in religious life. We celebrate and honor our common faith with a shared commitment to enhance the quality of life for all. Now I present to you the newest members of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego.
Good morning. I invite any children or youth who would like to come forward and join our new members if they would like to help us, optional, but to help us in reciting our affirmation. Okay, get your hands ready. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. Somos unitarios universalistas, personas de mentes abiertas, corazones amorosos, y manos que dan la bienvenida. And now I invite any children and youth who would like to join me and our other leaders on the patio for religious education.
And I invite our newest members to return to your seats. Thank you so much.
It's always hard for me to pick a favorite thing. Certainly welcoming new members is right up there, but I think my favorite thing may be that moment when you all do the motions for the affirmation. It's just such a beautiful thing. We pause at this time in our service to honor the memory of Reverend James E. Grant. Jim was a beloved member of this community, and he served here as an affiliate minister for many years. With his calm demeanor and loving presence, Jim helped us with the work of right relationship, and across our faith, he served congregations where there had been difficulty. Jim started out as an American Baptist and was actually ordained in that faith, but found that his progressive values were more at home in Unitarian Universalism, and so we got him to be part of us. And we will celebrate his life here on Saturday, February 24th at 1 p.m. We light this candle in Jim's honor and memory. And to mark the weightiness of this loss, we extinguish the flame of our chalice, symbol of our gathered community, because our community is diminished by the loss of him. Yet the light of this community continues, and Jim's spirit lives on in the stories and memories we share and the work we carry on in his place. And so from Jim's candle, we relight our chalice. This community of memory and hope shines on, and Jim lives on among us in the heart's long memory. In mystery we are born, in mystery we live, and in mystery we die. Now I have some announcements for us. This first one is time sensitive. Tomorrow, Martin Luther King Day at 9 a.m. is the People's Breakfast for MLK held at Balboa Park. We have a table there, and we still have a few seats available. It would be wonderful to have our table be full. So if you would like to attend, please contact Reverend Kristen immediately so she can add you to the list. You can send her an email if you need her email address, see me after worship. Pastoral care ministers are available after the service each Sunday out on our Hillcrest campus patio. This morning, our lay minister is Karen Thurston, wearing a beautifully colored scarf. We also have a lay minister available at the South Bay campus. And so I'm imagining him waving his hand at South Bay to say, I'm here, ready to listen to whatever is on your heart. When there is a fifth Tuesday in a month, as there is this month, your Board of Trustees hosts a meeting focused on our work of journeying toward wholeness. The meetings are held on Zoom, and they're open to all members of the First UU community. This month, on Tuesday, January 30th at 6:30, your ministers, Reverend Kristen and me, we will lead a workshop on the first 2 chapters of the book Transforming Conflict by Reverend Dr. Teresa Cooley. I have ordered copies that should arrive midweek, so if you don't have a copy and would like one, get in touch with me. You can also order the book online, and there's a Kindle version available. So we're going to focus on the first 2 chapters to give you kind of an introduction to the book, and then over the winter and spring, we will be offering book discussion groups so that we can really dive in deep to this resource.
And I'll jump in off script here with just one more announcement as Rosal is making her way up. Many of you have been attending our concert series through Front Street Productions and the Outreach and Growth Fund. And I want to invite you particularly to our next concert is Saturday, January 27th. January 27th, and Judd Caswell will be here. In the afternoon, he'll do a songwriting workshop, and in the evening, he'll do a concert. He's a fabulous singer-songwriter, a former colleague of Reverend Justine from her previous church in Brunswick, Maine. He's flying all the way out here to be with us, so please join us on January 27th.
Good morning. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Good. So one way we live our Unitarian Universalist values is by sharing our offering each week with an organization working for justice. Throughout the month of January, we're supporting different UU organizations. This week, our offering will be shared with Journey Toward Wholeness, JTW. Journey Toward Wholeness is the Unitarian Universalist Association's initiative which implements each congregation's anti-racism, anti-oppression commitment on a church-wide basis. At First UU, this group focuses on dismantling racism, eradicating oppression, and on bringing about transformation through increased awareness. Through your generosity, JTW here at First UU will be able to attend and offer training to our community on important topics like developing greater awareness and self-compassion and identifying, avoiding, and addressing microaggressions, those subtle and not subtle, so subtle acts of exclusions that can really cause harm. Thank you for supporting us and each other in this important work. And thank you for Reverend Justine for supporting JTW, really. You may donate this morning here in person by credit card using the dip jars, or by cash or check using the donation boxes. If you'd like assistance, please raise your hand. You may also donate online on our church website, firstuusandiego.org. Thank you for your generosity. This morning offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you.
This is a message for the Tech Deck. Your next slide should be a video of Bill James introducing the next part of the service.
Hi. This morning, in honor of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, we're going to share excerpts from his letter from a Birmingham jail. In April of 1963, Dr. King joined with other activists in Birmingham to protest racial segregation. Dr. King was arrested along with the other protesters and was horrified by the conditions he experienced in that jail. Someone smuggled in a newspaper in which 8 white clergy had published a piece calling for unity and calm in the city. In response to that letter, King wrote this piece, first scribbled along the margins of the smuggled-in newspaper. I am struck by the fact that this widely published and influential letter arose from the transformative conflict and dialogue between different parts of the religious community. We invite you to listen to these words, written 60 years ago, and see what you notice about the time we find ourselves in now. How much progress have we made in the journey toward wholeness as a nation and as people of faith? And what challenges remain for us to overcome? Marshall and Andrea are going to share a song with us from that time, and we are incorporating other music from the civil rights movement throughout this morning's service. As Dr. King once famously said, we can't start the march until the singers get here. Thank you.
Has anybody here seen my old friend Abraham? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seems the good die young. But I just looked around and he's gone. Has anybody here seen my old friend Martin? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seems the good die young. But I just looked around and he's gone. Has anybody here seen my old friend John? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seems the good die young. But I just looked around and he's gone. Didn't you love the things they stood for? Didn't they try to find some good for you and me? And we'll be free someday soon. It's gonna be one day. Has anybody here seen my old friend Bobby? Can
16 April 1963. My dear fellow clergymen, while confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across a recent statement calling my present activities unwise and untimely. Seldom do I pause to answer criticisms of my work and ideas. If I sought to answer all the criticisms that crossed my desk, my secretaries would have little time for anything other than such correspondence in the course of a day, and I would have no time for constructive work. But since I feel that you are men of genuine good will and that your criticisms are sincerely set forth, I want to try to answer your statement in what I hope will be patient and reasonable terms. I think I should indicate why I'm here in Birmingham, since you have been influenced by the view which argues against outsiders coming in. I have the honor of serving as president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an organization operating in every southern state with headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. We have some 85 affiliated organizations across the South, and one of them is the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights. Frequently, we share staff, educational, and financial resources with our affiliates. Several months ago, the affiliate here in Birmingham asked us to be on call to engage in a nonviolent direct action program if such were deemed necessary. We readily consented, and when the hour came, we lived up to our promise. So I, along with several members of my staff, am here because I was invited here. I'm here because I have organizational ties here. But more basically, I'm in Birmingham because injustice is here. Just as the prophets of the 8th century BC left their villages and carried their "Thus saith the Lord" far beyond the boundaries of their own towns, and just as the Apostle Paul left his village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to the far corners of the Greco-Roman world, so I am compelled to carry the gospels of freedom beyond my hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow provincial outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
You deplore the demonstrations taking place in Birmingham, but your statement, I'm sorry to say, fails to express a similar concern for the conditions that brought about the demonstrations. I am sure that none of you would want to rest content with a superficial kind of social analysis that deals merely with effects and does not grapple with underlying causes. It is unfortunate that demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham, but it is even more unfortunate that the city's white power structure left the Negro community with no alternative. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I have yet to engage in a direct action campaign that was well-timed in the view of those who have not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that justice too long delayed is justice denied. We have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. The nations of Asia and Africa are moving with jet-like speed toward gaining political independence. But we still creep at horse and buggy pace toward gaining a cup of coffee at a lunch counter. Perhaps it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say, wait. But when you have seen vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers at will and drown your sisters and brothers at whim, when you have seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, and even kill your black brothers and sisters, when you see the vast majority of your 20 million Negro brothers smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society, when you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she can't go to the public amusement park that has just been advertised on television, and see tears welling up in her eyes when she is told that Funtown is closed to colored children, and see ominous clouds of inferiority beginning to form in her little mental sky, and see her beginning to distort her personality by developing an unconscious bitterness toward white people. When you have to concoct an answer for a 5-year-old son who is asking, "Daddy, why do white people treat colored people so mean?" When you take a cross-country drive and find it necessary to sleep night after night in the uncomfortable corners of your automobile because no motel will accept you. When you are humiliated day in and day out by naggy signs reading white and colored. When your first name becomes N-I-G-G, I will not say that word. That's my only editorial comment. I will not say that word. Your middle name becomes Boy, however old you are. And your last name becomes John. And your wife and mother are never given the respected title Mrs. When you are harried by day and haunted by night by the fact that you are a Negro living constantly at tiptoe stance, never quite knowing what to expect next, and are plagued with inner fears and outer resentments, when you are forever fighting a degenerating sense of nobodiness, then you will understand why we find it difficult to wait.
Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
There comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over, and men are no longer willing to be plunged into the abyss of despair. I hope, sirs, you can understand our legitimate and unavoidable impatience. You express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws. This is certainly a legitimate concern, since we so diligently urge people to obey the Supreme Court's decision of 1954 outlawing segregation in the public schools. At first glance, it may seem rather paradoxical for us to consciously break laws. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer lies in the fact that there are two types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One has not only a legal, but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. Now, what is the difference between the two? How does one determine whether a law is just or unjust? A just law is a man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of God. An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. To put it in the terms of St. Thomas Aquinas, an unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal law and natural law. Any law that uplifts human personality is just. Any law that degrades human personality is unjust. All segregation statutes are unjust because segregation distorts the soul and damages the personality. It gives the segregator a false sense of superiority and the segregated a false sense of inferiority. Segregation, to use the terminology of the Jewish philosopher Martin Buber, substitutes an I-it relationship for an I-thou relationship and ends up relegating persons to the status of things. Hence, segregation is not only politically, economically, and sociologically unsound, it is morally wrong and sinful. Paul Tillich has said that sin is separation. Is not segregation existential expression of man's tragic separation, his awful estrangement, his terrible sinfulness? Thus it is that I can urge men to obey the 1954 decision of the Supreme Court, for it is morally right. And I can urge them to disobey segregation ordinances, for they are morally wrong. Sometimes a law is just on its face and unjust in its application. For instance, I have been arrested on a charge of parading without a permit. Now, there's nothing wrong in having an ordinance which requires a permit for a parade. But such an ordinance becomes unjust when it is used to maintain segregation and to deny citizens the First Amendment privilege of peaceful assembly and protest.
Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
I hope you're able to see the distinction I'm trying to point out. In no sense do I advocate evading or defying the law, as would the rabid segregationalist. That would lead to anarchy. One who breaks an unjust law must do so openly, lovingly, and with a willingness to accept the penalty. I submit that an individual who breaks a law that conscience tells him is unjust and who willingly accepts the penalty of imprisonment in order to arouse the conscience of the community over its injustice is in reality expressing the highest respect for law. We should never forget that everything Adolf Hitler did in Germany was legal, and everything the Hungarian freedom fighters did in Hungary was illegal. It was illegal to aid and comfort a Jew in Hitler's Germany. Even so, I am sure that had I lived in Germany at the time, I would have aided and comforted my Jewish brothers. If today I lived in a communist country where certain principles dear to the Christian faith are suppressed, I would openly advocate disobeying that country's anti-religious laws. I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection.
There must be a God somewhere.
I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice. And that when they fail for this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that the present tension in the South is a necessary phase of the transition from an obnoxious positive peace in which the Negro passively had to accept his unjust plight, to a substantive and positive peace in which all men will respect the dignity and worth of all human personalities. Actually, we who engage in nonviolent direct action are not the creators of tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. Like a boil that can never be cured when it is covered, but must be opened with all its ugliness to the natural medicines of air and light. Injustice must be exposed with all the tensions exposure creates to the light of human conscience in the air of national opinion before it can be cured.
over my head. I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
Oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. The yearning for freedom eventually manifests itself, and that is what has happened to the American Negro. Something within has reminded him of his birthright of freedom, and something without has reminded him that it can be gained. Consciously or unconsciously, he has been caught up by the zeitgeist, and with his black brothers of Africa and his brown and yellow brothers of Asia, South America, and the Caribbean, the United States Negro is moving with a sense of great urgency toward the promised land of racial justice. If one recognizes this vital urge that has engulfed the Negro community, one should readily understand why public demonstrations are taking place. The Negro has many pent-up resentments and latent frustrations, and he must release them. So let him march, let him make prayer pilgrimages to the City Hall, let him go on freedom rides, and try to understand why he must do so. If his repressed emotions are not released in non-violent ways, they will seek expression through violence. This is not a threat, but a fact of history. So I have not said to my people, get rid of your discontent. Rather, I've tried to say that this normal and healthy discontent can be channeled into the creative outlet of nonviolent direct action. And now this approach is being termed extremist. But though I was initially disappointed at being categorized as an extremist, as I continued to think about the matter, I gradually gained a measure of satisfaction from the label. Was not Jesus an extremist for love? Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you? Was not Amos an extremist for justice? Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream? Was not Paul an extremist for the Christian gospel? I bear in my body the marks of Lord Jesus. Was not Martin Luther an extremist? Here I stand, I cannot do otherwise, so help me God. And John Bunyan, I will stay in jail to the end of my days before I make a butchery of my conscience. And Abraham Lincoln, this nation cannot survive half slave and half free. And Thomas Jefferson, we hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. So the question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists will we be? Will we be extremists for hate or for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? In that dramatic scene on Calvary's Hill, 3 men were crucified. We must never forget that all 3 were crucified for the same crime, the crime of extremism. 2 were extremists for immorality and thus fell below their environment. The others, Jesus Christ, was an extremist for love, truth, and goodness, and thereby rose above his environment. Perhaps the South, the nation, and the world are in dire need of creative extremists.
There must be a God somewhere.
When I was suddenly catapulted into the leadership of the bus protest in Montgomery, Alabama a few years ago, I felt we would be supported by the white church. I felt that the white ministers, priests, and rabbis of the South would be among our strongest allies. Instead, some have been outright opponents, refusing to understand the freedom movement and misrepresenting its leaders. All too many others have been more cautious than courageous and have remained silent behind the anesthetizing security of stained glass windows. In spite of my shattered dreams, I came to Birmingham with the hope that the white religious leadership of this community would see the justice of our cause and, with deep moral concern, would serve as the channel through which our just grievances could reach the power structure. I had hoped that each of you would understand, but again, I have been disappointed. I have heard numerous Southern religious leaders admonish their worshipers to comply with a desegregation decision because it is the law. But I have longed to hear the white ministers declare, "Follow this decree because integration is morally right and because the Negro is your brother." In the midst of blatant injustices inflicted upon the Negro, I have watched the white churchmen stand on the sidelines and mouth pious irrelevancies and sanctimonious trivialities. In the midst of a mighty struggle to rid our nation of racial and economic injustice, I have heard many ministers say, "Those are social issues with which the gospel has no real concern." And I have watched many churches commit themselves to a completely otherworldly religion, which makes a strange, unbiblical distinction between body and soul, between the sacred and the secular.
One day, the South will recognize its real heroes. They will be the James Merediths, with the noble sense of purpose that enables them to face jeering and hostile mobs, and with the agonizing loneliness that characterizes the life of the pioneer. They will be old, oppressed, battered Negro women, symbolized in a 72-year-old woman in Montgomery, Alabama, who rose up with a sense of dignity and with her people decided not to ride segregated buses, and who responded with ungrammatical profundity to one who inquired about her weariness. "My feet is tired, but my soul is at rest." They will be the young high school and college students, the young ministers of the gospel and a host of their elders, courageously and nonviolently sitting in at lunch counters and willingly going to jail for conscience sake. One day, the South will know that when these disinherited children of God sat down at lunch counters, they were in reality standing up for what is best in the American dream and for the most sacred values in our Judeo-Christian heritage, thereby bringing our nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in their formulation of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. If I have said anything in this letter that overstates the truth and indicates an unreasonable impatience, I beg you to forgive me. If I have said anything that understates the truth and indicates my having a patience that allows me to settle for anything less than brotherhood, I beg God to forgive me. I hope this letter finds you strong in the faith. I also hope that circumstances will soon make it possible for me to meet each of you, not as an integrationist or a civil rights leader, but as a fellow clergyman and a Christian brother. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away, and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. Yours, for the cause of peace and brotherhood, Martin Luther King, Jr.
Over my head, I
60 years ago. I know that we're running a little bit over, but I would love for you just to take 1 minute and turn to your neighbor. If you're watching from home, you can write in the chat and just name for yourself and each other something that stands out for you, something that maybe no longer seems true, and something that feels like it could have been written yesterday. So just take a moment, turn to your neighbor, and see what stands out for you. So there's plenty to notice, yes, that still is alive for us. So let's continue these conversations, and as we go about this Martin Luther King weekend, let us remember the work that he started and that we must continue.
So we'll join together in a moment in our closing hymn, We Shall Overcome. The Highlander Folk School was an activist training center in Tennessee. It was founded in the 30s. And it was a training center for the leaders of the labor and civil rights movements, particularly, which trained people in nonviolent direct action, people like Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, like Rosa Parks, like John Lewis. They all attended workshops there and taught them. And they had a program of music as a strategy for nonviolence. And through that program, Zilphia Horton, who was the wife of the founder and the music director of the school, took the words of the hymn, I Shall Overcome, sort of a gospel folk song, and created We Shall Overcome out of that and turned it into a song that we could all sing together. And that song then was spread by the likes of Pete Seeger and Guy Carawan and Fannie Lou Hamer all the way through the civil rights movement and became one of the two anthems of that movement. It was sung at direct actions, marches, protests, freedom rides, all throughout the movement. And so we connect ourselves to those freedom fighters, those freedom riders, and those singers as we rise in body or spirit and sing this together.
us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away, and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. May it be so. Blessed be.
Let us turn our thoughts today to Martin Luther King and recognize that there are ties between us, all men and women living on the earth, ties of hope and love, sister and brotherhood, that we are bound together in our desire to see the world become a place in which our children can grow free and strong. We are bound together by the task that stands before us and the road that lies ahead. We are bound and we are bound. There is a feeling like the clenching of a fist. There is a hunger in the center of the chest. There is a passage through the darkness and the mist. Though the body sleeps, the heart will never rest. Shed a little light, oh Lord, so that we can see.
So that we can
Just
see.
a little light, oh
Shed a little light, shed a little light.
Want to stand it on up.
Oh, shed a little light.
Want to walk it on down. Shed a little light, oh Lord.
Can't get no light from a dollar bill. Don't give me no light from a TV screen. When I look in my eyes, I want to drink my fill from the well on the hill. Shed a little light, oh Lord, so that we can see. Just a little light, oh Lord. Wanna stand it on up, stand it on up, oh Lord. Wanna walk it on down, shed a little light, oh Lord.
There is a feeling like the clenching of a fist. There is a hunger in the center of the chest. There is a passage through the darkness and the mist. And though the body sleeps, the heart will never rest. Let us turn our thoughts today to Martin Luther King and recognize that there are ties between us, all men and women living on the earth, ties of hope and love, of sister